What do you say, everybody? Welcome to Monday Night Quarterback. We do it here on the Bama Insider YouTube channel. We talk Alabama football. We're going to talk a little basketball on the show as well. Give us a thumbs up and subscribe as we talk to you tonight about the Crimson Tide, some things going on off-season-wise for football. We'll get into that. Some news in recruiting. We'll talk about that. Basketball has a Murderers Row schedule coming up as well. But it is always great to have you guys here. Chris Daughtry behind the scenes, Trey Yanity, and I'm Mick Gillispie. Guys, our show is brought to you by Westgate Luxury Condominiums, located right next to Bryant-Denny Stadium, 200 feet next to Bryant-Denny. I mean, like literally right there. The Skygate Club on the roof is a great place to tailgate or hang out anytime. You're near the Walk of Champions, the Quad, campus, the Strip. It's all right there. So next time you come to Tuscaloosa, check them out. And if you're right now in the market to buy, there's some units available. 1 to 5 bedroom units, 900 to 3,000 square feet, the oversized balconies, the amazing kitchens. It is luxury at its finest. Find out more at westgateal.com. That's westgateal.com. All right, guys, Monday Night Quarterback. Let's get right into this here, Trey. First off, though, what a weekend of NFL football. I mean, I still can't believe that the Bills blew that game with 13 seconds left, but Patrick Mahomes was great, and it was fun watching all those games come down to the end.
What an unbelievable weekend. I mean, this might have been the greatest weekend of NFL football in the history of the whole game. What's up, everybody? Thanks for joining us tonight. Great to be here. But you said it, Mick. I mean, it kind of got better and better as the weekend went on. And, watching Patrick Mahomes against Josh Allen, we knew this was going to be an unbelievable matchup. But, 13 seconds, I didn't think it was enough for, a guy that's now making a case at Tom Brady, as, we'll see here down the line. But just an incredible weekend of football. Really exciting way to finish it out. My picks didn't go too well, if I'm going to be honest. I had the Chiefs, but other than that, a lot of upsets this weekend. A lot of Bama guys, getting in there as well. So just a lot of fun. Love this time of the year. Love it for the transfers. Basketball going on as well. So a lot to talk about tonight. Guys, get in the comments. Hit the like button. Like Mick said, Westgate could not be an easier place to watch the football game. It's right there. Guys, it couldn't be easier to hit the like button on this YouTube video. It's right there as well. So just do that for us. Get this video out in the algorithm. But an amazing week of sports. This is probably my favorite time of the year in sports, if I'm going to be honest, as we kind of get into the thick of basketball, get the football headlines continuing to come here leading up to the Super Bowl. But, just excited for another week of potential transfers and everything else going on.
Yeah, look, I went 2-2 this weekend, so I would have at least broke even at Pearl River Resort, but I wasn't sure about the Bills-Chiefs game, so maybe I would have won because I wouldn't have put too much money on that one. But one thing that has surprised me is that this guy right here is transferring from Georgia to Alabama. So it's the second straight year that a wide receiver, and Jermaine Burton this year, played against Alabama for the title. Last year, it was Jamison Williams who lost playing for Ohio State. Burton's Georgia team won, and instead of trying to repeat, he's going to Georgia's archenemy, Alabama.
I mean, this was maybe the least crazy headline, I think, with all the football going on yesterday. But this broke right at the end of that wild Tampa Bay game. And, this is the exciting news I think Alabama fans needed as we talk about this receiving room. And, we talk about, I think, really just the skill guys in general. We look at tight end. Alabama lost their skill tight end and Jaleel Billingsley to Texas. And, whether that was a good fit or not, you need some skill guys to kind of come in and fill in those roles, especially with John Mechie, Jamison Williams, the veterans on your team going to the NFL. I think Jermaine Burton, is one of these guys that's going to come in and maybe not be a Jamison Williams necessarily. I don't think he has that skill set, but I think he has the consistency that you need for this team. Alabama has a lot of really talented young wide receivers. I think you're going to see Christian Leary really come onto the scene this year. And, we saw Ja'Cory Brooks kind of make an impact. JoJo Earl last season as well. Maybe a Jai Hall can make an impact. But I think regardless of all of that, you need leadership in your receiving corps. This year was Slade Bolden. He was kind of your out route guy, your 3rd down and 6 receiver. I think Jermaine Burton could certainly be that. Jamison Williams was your deep guy this year, and he was a massive transfer for Alabama to get. But, you talk about this transfer portal and the way it's going so far in 2022, I think you almost feel even better. You get Jahmyr Gibbs, you get Elias Ricks, and now Jermaine Burton. And, Elias Ricks, I think, for a long time wanted to come to Alabama and, made that decision early on in the transfer portal process. But, from what I've heard, he had a pretty big impact on this Jermaine Burton transfer as well. They've known each other for quite some time. Their families go back a ways. So, I think that they like to call each other twins. I think that, Elias Ricks made the real pitch to get Burton to campus. Trayshawn Holden as well, of course, there with the tweet, which is, why I love this group specifically so much. Trayshawn Holden was not wide receiver number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on this team this year. He doesn't know what his minutes are going to look like. He doesn't know what his targets are going to look like coming into 2022, but he's still getting on social media, making the phone calls, trying to recruit other wide receivers to come to the program. He just loved the energy of this group. And I think Jermaine Burton is going to add that leadership, that veteran presence that this receiver core really needed.
Yeah, look, I agree with you. I'm really surprised, though, that you would transfer from Georgia to Alabama, but I guess it's the same thing if you would transfer from LSU to Alabama. Now, if you're a receiver, why wouldn't you want to play for Bryce Young? And we're going to talk receivers here coming up, and quarterbacks, right, that Alabama has, including the Heisman Trophy winner and potentially Arch Manning. But before we get there, let's take a look at the transfer portal moving forward. Alabama lost some guys to the transfer portal. Shane Lee's going to USC. Which was kind of surprising to me. They had guys go to Arkansas and some of the smaller schools. Paul Tyson went to Arizona State. I don't think that's a big deal. But where do you think Alabama is going to look and when moving forward to maybe add some more guys in that transfer portal?
I think tight end is really where you start. And skill guys, I think you take them in as much bulk as you can. I don't think there's ever going to be a team that's turning away skill guys, especially guys that have played in, a Power 5 conference or played for a team like Georgia, guys that have playoff experience like Jermaine Burton. I don't know if you're going to be able to find a tight end quite like that, but, you kind of look at the list here of guys that, aren't in the transfer portal. I'm not going to speculate their future saying they're going to get in the transfer portal, but guys that it would kind of make sense for Alabama to target right now. Brock Bowers is an elite tight end. He's going to be the best tight end in the country this upcoming season, in my opinion. So, you look at Georgia's depth chart, go to their number 2, 3. I love Arik Gilbert with the Georgia Bulldogs. I think he could be the kind of guy that maybe sees the writing on the wall with Brock Bowers and decides to enter in the transfer portal. This is maybe a top 15 tight end in the country. He just has another one that's in the top 3 on his team. You look around the SEC as well. But go to South Carolina, Jaheim Bell. They just had a huge transfer tight end from Oklahoma join their team. And I don't know if South Carolina's in the position where they're going to be starting. They're going to have, for sure starters right away, especially guys that transferred in. But, if you're Jaheim Bell, you're probably in the top 20 tight end wise around the country too. And, with Spencer Rattler coming in, throwing to his former tight end now, I could see, him being a guy that maybe enters the transfer portal here and a guy that Alabama could definitely go after. I think tight end is where you start, because you look around the country right now, the athletic, the modern style of tight end, the Kyle Pitts of the world, a lot of these teams, especially in the SEC, are finding these guys. Alabama doesn't have that guy right now. We thought, Alabama did have that guy in Jaleel Billingsley, but it didn't really work out. So I think they look for a guy like Jaheim Bell, an athletic tight end, that can come in and make an impact right away. I think they stay, somewhere in the Power 5 with these guys. You look at the transfers already, Jahmyr Gibbs, Elias Ricks, now Jermaine Burton, all Power 5 guys and all guys that, have at least started for a season at their school. I think Alabama, is going to take whoever fits their bill and whoever's, willing to join this program and maybe wait it out a little bit. But, I think they do stay in the Power 5, and I think they would love to get another SEC player if they could.
Be interesting to see tight end, maybe an offensive lineman, maybe a tackle. Yeah. Be interesting. Maybe another wide receiver, right? I mean, you talk about a wide receiver room with all those guys going to the NFL that has a lot of opportunities.
Oh, no doubt about it. I mean, we talk about it with Jermaine Burton, but he's going to be more of your consistent wide receiver, like I said. I think there's still a chance you see that explosive, deep ball, big play wide receiver enter this program at some point. Kayshon Boutte was the talk, when we were doing the early signing period. Thought he may enter his name into the transfer portal, and Bama would be a really good fit for him. And they were hot on his recruiting trail when he was making his decision the first go round. He hasn't entered the transfer portal, so for Bama fans, that would be the most exciting play, I think, at this point. But without a big time wide receiver in the portal, you just got to take a breath, wait. Jameson Williams transferred in late June, early July last year. Henry To'oTo'o just the same. So there's time. Spring practice kind of is a way for Alabama to figure out exactly what they need and exactly, where they want to recruit. So I think, let that go down. Maybe we get to mid-April, early May, start to get into the summer a little bit, and you start to see some of these guys enter in the transfer portal that weren't there before, like a Kayshon Boutte perhaps, or, somebody else we're not talking about right now. But, just give it some time. It's great to get these early guys like the Jermaine Burtons, like the Elias Ricks, but, you can get a Jameson Williams down the stretch in, late June, July even.
Guys, as you hang out with us here on the Bama Insider YouTube channel, we appreciate you being part of the family. Like and subscribe. Hit the thumbs up with Trey Yanity. I'm Mick Gillispie. We do this 6 o'clock every Monday, as you know, talk Alabama sports, most notably football. We're going to talk a little bit of basketball, though. This team's definitely worth mentioning. That's coming up later in the show. But let's stick with football now, Trey, and let's transition over to quarterbacks. And Alabama made that visit, right? The Crimson Tide sent not just Nick Saban, but Bill O'Brien to a basketball game to see none other than Arch Manning, the nephew of Eli and Peyton. The guy looks exactly like his grandfather, which is really uncanny, right? Who was an NFL star himself, Archie Manning, and he's named after him. And he's the most prized prospect in that year's recruiting class, and he's named as 5, right? It's Alabama, it's Georgia, it's Clemson, it's Texas, and I think it's LSU, right? That's the 5.
That is the 5. Yeah. This is this is a guy that just doesn't talk enough. This is something that Andrew Bone and I talk about every week on our recruiting show. Arch Manning did pick out a 5, but I think it's still, as unclear as it was before. These schools are the schools that he had visited and, he had maybe talked about liking, but I still don't think there's really a direction here. Alabama is making as hard of a pitch as anybody in the country for Arch Manning. This is a kid that does have the legacy with his family, but outside of that, you watch him play, even watching his basketball highlights from this weekend, you can tell just how athletic he is and, how advanced his body is in comparison to a lot of the kids around the country. I have a feeling a lot of that's genetics, having the whole Manning family around you to kind of get you right football-wise too, I think is a big deal. And, for Alabama, this would be another really big recruit. That being said, if Alabama isn't able to land Arch Manning, I've said this from the jump, I don't think it's, that big of a loss. Alabama's quarterback room, we're going to get into it here in a second, but Alabama's quarterback room is so deep right now. And you look into the future a little bit, it's going to be just as deep for the next, half decade. You have Ty Simpson coming in. I really, really like this kid, Nico Iamaleava, out in California in Arch Manning's class as well. So, if you don't hit with Arch Manning, there's 3-4 quarterbacks in this class I really, really like. But, of course, having Arch Manning, thinking about the NIL deals and thinking about the publicity and everything else that would come to the program is great. How much of that is going to be too much for Alabama? This isn't a program that, invites a lot of the outside noise and distractions. And I think with Arch Manning, he himself isn't going to invite all of that, but that's going to come. I mean, it's a Manning, and this is the first Manning, we've gotten to see play college football since Eli Manning at Ole Miss. So I think that this is, I think that this could be a really, really good land for Alabama. But at the same time, it's not a huge miss if you're not able to get Arch Manning. I think it's the bigger miss is to see where he does end up, because if he does go to LSU or Clemson or Georgia or one of these schools that you potentially play in the future, that's where it hurts a little bit. But, losing him to a school, even like Clemson outside of the conference, maybe doesn't sting quite as much. Overall, incredible football player. Really excited to see how this goes. But like I said, Mick, at this point, it's a quiet kid. We really don't know much more than those 5 schools.
We do know one thing, though, that Alabama has become kind of this quarterback right? I mean, you talk about Tua in the NFL, and then you talk about Mac Jones in the NFL and Jalen Hurts in the NFL, and this guy right here is going to be in the NFL, maybe a number 1 pick, and Bryce Young, the Heisman Trophy winner, getting into Alabama's quarterback room right now, right? Obviously you got him. He's not going to stay after this year. And then you got past him, you got Jalen Milroe, who has this blazing speed. I'm not sure. We haven't seen enough of him to know. And I'm not sure what his arm is. I know that he's got good arm strength, but he hasn't played a whole lot. Now I'm guessing he slots up the number 2. And then Ty Simpson, who's been brought in all these great accolades from high school. His dad's a college football coach. He knows the game. You got to love those coaches' sons. And he's already at Alabama. He helped them prepare for Georgia. It's a pretty good quarterback room.
I would say so. This quarterback room is looking pretty elite. You know, how crazy is that to say that Alabama, for the last, since 2015, 16, they've been quarterback university. I mean, shoot, who's the quarterback while you were in school here, Mick?
Well, we had Freddie Kitchens, Andrew Zhao, Tyler Watts. Brody Croyle was there for a little while. My buddy Spencer Pennington, all really good athletes, but not elite quarterbacks like the guys that we have now. And that's no disrespect to them, who, some of those guys I know and I think a lot of, but I mean, and they would probably tell you the same thing.
Yeah, no, it's no disrespect to those guys. And, you even look at the beginning of the Saban era, some of the quarterbacks, it's no disrespect to those guys either, but it was just a different style of team. I mean, you really focused on your running back room and your defense and everything else. It wasn't about the quarterback. It wasn't about the receiving core. Nowadays, not just at Alabama, but everywhere in the country, it's about who's throwing the football. It's about who's catching the football, I think, more than anything else on the field. And, for Alabama to get the Jalen Hurts to kind of change the style of this quarterback room, and then, get an insane pro-style quarterback like Tua Tagovailoa to come in and, kind of change the culture yet again. I think that really opened the door to getting, this depth, like you see, to have Mac Jones be able to come in the next year. And now, the Ty Simpson of the world to be able to sit here and say, well, there's elite quarterbacks that come to this school and they have to wait their turn and they get their opportunity and still can get to the NFL. Alabama's built something at quarterback. Coming into this season, it just doesn't get much better than this. I mean, you have the Heisman winner returning on your team. And, I think a guy that still has stuff to prove. He didn't win the national title this year. He was on the team when they beat Ohio State, but he still, needs to go out and win his national title. And I think that's something that, you're going to see kind of fuel his passion this season. And behind him, you got Jalen Milroe. And like you said, we haven't seen that arm quite yet, but the arm strength is there. You can go to his huddle and pull up his highlights from high school and, see the deep ball. Excellent arm. And then you talk about Ty Simpson. I mean, he's kind of a nice mix of both of them. Pro-style kind of kid and, a guy that's just worked so hard from what we've heard. I don't know if Will Anderson, has been good on his promise to lay off up until we get into the spring here, but he's going to get tested week in and week out. And I think just being around quarterbacks like Bryce Young, quarterbacks like Jalen Milroe, and, potentially now Archer or whoever's to come, it just makes you better. And I think Ty Simpson is the kind of kid that will wait his turn and will get his turn and eventually, lead this team to great success. Jalen Milroe kind of confuses me a little bit, because I just don't know when his opportunity to start is going to be. I think in a perfect world, Bryce starts this season, moves on to the NFL. Jalen gets a season, and then you go with Ty Simpson, whoever else after that. But, just great to have that depth on the team. Maybe they try Jalen Milroe in some other roles this season before he's allowed to be that starter. But overall, you look around the country, I don't think you feel more confident about a quarterback room.
I was surprised that we didn't see Jalen Milroe help out in the running back category last year. But you know what? I mean, I guess all said and done, they didn't feel like that was where they wanted him, or maybe he that wasn't something that he could do. But he brings a lot to the table with his athleticism, and maybe he's a great quarterback. I think all of them get a shot, though. I mean, we've seen that. If you stick around and you live through the process, it may be a year, but it could be a great year. Ask Mac Jones, and then from there, you're able to kind of platoon yourself into the NFL draft and get what you want anyway. Maybe a national championship and maybe a first-round pick, and then, your own NFL team where you're starting your first season for Bill Belichick. I mean, if it works out like that for a guy that I didn't think was going to get on the field because I thought Bryce Young was going to have that job, I was wrong. And then Bryce Young wins the Heisman. So he waited. He could have transferred out, and then he got his chance, and look what he's done with his chance. So all those guys could theoretically fit into the system if they're patient and they believe in the process. That's not how the game always works these days, but there he is, Bryce Young with his Heisman. All right, before we switch gears and talk a little bit of hoops, guys, like and subscribe as you hang out with us on the Bama Insider YouTube channel. Alabama football rolling into the offseason, and we're going to be covering the Senior Bowl. Trey, give us a little preview of the Senior Bowl, and then let's talk some hoops.
Yeah, it's going to be an excellent Senior Bowl as always. Moving over to the new stadium this year, they're out of Lad Peoples down in Mobile, so excited to check that out. But Brian Robinson's going to be down there, Fidarian Mathis as well. We're going to have a lot of coverage, guys. This season, last season, we weren't really allowed with the regulations to get out and get the highlights we wanted. Get the all access that we're typically able to provide. But for this upcoming week, we're going to have a lot. We're going to be able to shoot practice every day, cover these guys to the full extent. And you talk about this game every year. I think it's really kind of like the Pro Bowl of college football. It's a relaxing event. You're at the beach, but it's still an opportunity to prove yourself. In the Pro Bowl, you've made it. You're good to go. For these guys, it's a chance to improve your draft stock a little bit. The combine nowadays dominates, and these pro days mean a whole lot, but you never know which scout is at the Reeces Senior Bowl or which coach or whoever is there to see you make an incredible play. And I think for Brian Robinson, this game is really important because his stock is kind of all over the place. We don't really know exactly where Brian Robinson's going to end up in this draft. And I think, to go out there and play against all-stars around the country and, maybe get 10 to 12 carries in this game could be really, really beneficial for Brian Robinson. Just to, to be able to see some of the best players in the country is going to be a really cool experience, I think. And for these guys to kind of get a look back and, be with the guys that they came in with class-wise around the country, I think is a really cool deal. Excited to see Fidarian Mathis get after it one more time too. And, just for these guys to wrap up their career the right way. I think that's what's important. Saw Mac Jones last year and, some other guys in the past just have so much fun with this event. So, guys, be sure to tune in. We're going to have a lot of coverage on it. And let us know what you want. I mean, we're going to be down there for probably too long. So Chris and I, we're going to try to avoid twiddling our thumbs. Let us know what you guys want to see, any interviews, anything else. Get in the comments and give us a shout because it's going to be a really fun week.
Yeah, look, the NFL draft starts in Mobile, Alabama. Don't forget that. And you're talking about all the scouts and everything else going on. So Chris and Trey will be down there. And, of course, we'll be covering it right here on the Bama Insider YouTube channel like no one else, like a blanket. All right, let's switch gears. But first, guys, like and subscribe. Hit the thumbs up as you hang out with us here for Monday Night Quarterback. Now we're going to pivot and call it Monday Night Point Guard because we are going to talk a little basketball. And, of course, when you talk Alabama basketball, you talk about this guy right here, Britton Johnson, the fireball, wait a second, he's a walk-on. He's not a 5-star prospect. He's not a 4-star. I love the fact that Nate Oates brings this guy in first half of a game against Missouri. Didn't like the energy that Alabama was playing with that game. So he brings the walk-on in who normally gets what we would call garbage time. And, the guy's 1 for 4 shooting, diving around, getting offensive rebounds. He doesn't have the ability that the other guys have, kind of like Brian Robinson. Brian Robinson, not to this extent, right? But the thing you love about Brian Robinson is that he's got this big heart, right? And this guy brings big heart to the game. And it changed the energy in the game on Saturday and led to a come-from-behind win for Alabama.
Oh, my goodness, yeah. I mean, you talk about a spark, and Britton Johnson is one of these kids that, you have on every team. This is a guy that works really hard, doesn't get a lot of minutes, was a walk-on, the pride of Mountain Brook High School there in Birmingham. But, if you've gone to an Alabama basketball game where the opponent isn't quite up to the standard and Alabama's up, 25, 30 points, you see Britton Johnson come into the game and you see the student section reaction, the crowd reaction when this kid gets his chance. Tyler Barnes and some of these other walk-ons as well. But, I knew the second Britton Johnson went to the table, the crowd, if nothing else, was going to bring a whole new energy. And, when Britton Johnson got into the game, we saw what kind of energy he could bring. You talk about a spark. You want that to be somebody that makes an immediate impact. That's not always scoring the basketball. We saw him, get in the lane, get a couple of points there. Couldn't finish the end one, but it's about the rebounding. It's about the hustle, the defense. Chris made a great comparison, our producer, during the game. He kind of brought that energy that we saw from Herb Jones last year. Doesn't, quite have the skill set or the physicality that Herb Jones did, but that energy was incredibly necessary for this game. This is a Missouri team that's the worst shooting team in the entire SEC. They already beat Alabama the week before by shooting the basketball well. You come into this game and, they shoot the lights out for those first 5 minutes. Down the stretch, don't get me wrong, they shot incredibly well, but, how much did that mean for Britton Johnson to come in and to kind of just change up the momentum a little bit? Alabama, it didn't take the lead there. They didn't go on a crazy run when Britton got in the game. And, they did have to come back in the second half. But I think it could have gotten really out of hand early in that game without Britton Johnson. And, just team-wise, I think this is huge for Nate Oates to say, hey, if you work hard in practice, if you show me that you're willing to get in and give as much energy as you can, we're going to give you a chance every now and then. I think this is perfect for a game like Missouri because, no matter how bad you're down, if you're Alabama and you're scoring 80 points a game against a team that's giving up about 85, 90, and a team that only scores about 60, you're probably going to have a chance down the stretch like Alabama did. You don't want to see them have to come back like that against such a poor SEC opponent like Missouri, but this was a game that got you feeling good for a lot of different reasons. For Britton Johnson, for the hustle, for the hard hat points that you saw everybody give there at the end. This was an ugly win for Alabama basketball, but for the storylines like Britton Johnson, for Jaden Shackelford to kind of get his swagger back at the end of the game, this game was really, really important for Alabama basketball. Regardless of what happened on the other side of the state, or regardless of what had happened in the last 4 games, Alabama got another big win, 2-0 on the week, and just kind of hit the reset button here.
Yeah, no doubt. It was a great win for Alabama, and it sets up this stretch now where Nate Oates and his guys are going to be dealing with some really big-time opponents. They play Georgia, an awful team that they should destroy. Georgia has been just so bad at basketball, right? Then when they get past that, Saturday they take on Baylor. Then they're going to play number 1 Auburn. I mean, come on, right? Then after that, they got to play Kentucky. So you're talking about a murderer's row of games for this Crimson Tide basketball team and Nate Oates.
This is a gauntlet of gauntlets coming up here, but this is what he planned on. And I think this is why it's so important that they opened up Louisiana Tech, who won their conference last year. They played South Dakota State in their second game, who won their conference last year. Iona won their conference. They got a big, early game against them. They played Gonzaga, who was in the Final Four last year leading up to this. Then they played Houston in the next game, who was in the Final Four. You open up the SEC with a really quality opponent in Tennessee. You play Florida early on. This schedule was made by design for stretches like this because this team, as bad as they've looked, as bad as they've guarded the perimeter and, exposed the baseline and just looked sloppy defensively in general, they're battle tested. And when they're playing a stretch like this, they're not necessarily going to get worn down after, playing a Baylor, then having to go play Auburn or having to go play Kentucky. This team knows how to, bring that energy day in and day out. I think ultimately the crux, is this team just kind of playing down to the level of their opponent this season. Hopefully on the other side of that coin, that means that, they're able to play up to Baylor. They're able to play up, to Kentucky and Auburn. But, I think this team has just been so confusing because of their inconsistencies and the fact that they've showed up against the Gonzagas, but they haven't showed up against the Missouris. I don't know what this stretch is going to look like. And, leading off with Georgia, I think it's kind of a knuckleball here because this Georgia team, as bad as they've been, they've had some really big wins this year. They got a big win over Memphis early on in the season, a team that beat Alabama by 15. So you got to come out, play each one of these games, like it's Gonzaga. Of course, against Baylor, it's going to be a similar feel. I think for this Baylor game, you match up really, really well if you're Alabama. Bigs against bigs. You look at that Houston game. Alabama's backcourt and Houston's backcourt look almost the same. And Alabama won that game because, ultimately they just outmuscled them. They got more rebounds. They were a little bit grittier in that game. That could be a very similar look against Baylor. Just have the better backcourt. I think, Missouri, Charles Bediako gets a lot of hate. Now everybody's on this, Charles Bediako is terrible. Charles Bediako can't play. I think you're seeing that because Charles Bediako was asked to go guard a stretch forward in that game. He had to go guard the perimeter. He had to get out there a little bit. He's a true center. And while he hasn't been as aggressive as he needed to be this season, he doesn't need to be getting out on the perimeter. Against Baylor, he won't have to do that. Against Kentucky, he's not going to have to do that. Against Auburn, we're going to see a very similar look as game one. He's going to have to do that a little bit more. But, if Juwan Gary can come in and provide the minutes we saw early on in the season, you feel a little bit better about your backcourt. I think ultimately Alabama matches up against anybody in the country. You can beat Gonzaga, but you can also lose to Missouri. You just have to show up with that energy that day. And, ultimately you have to get the right matchup. I think Baylor's the right matchup. I think Kentucky's the right matchup. I worry about Auburn again. And this Georgia team, they're a little bit tricky themselves here. So hopefully, I think in a perfect world, you're looking at 3-1. Probably not going to win all of these games, but I think worst case scenario, you're looking at 1-3, and that's not the end of the world for this team. They still have those quad one wins, and we're getting into February now. They still have some opportunities to make that back up.
Yeah, they've won 4 games against top 15 teams. They have the toughest schedule. At least they've played the toughest schedule in college basketball, according to some of the ratings. And then it's just going to get tougher. You never know with these guys. You never know. They could win all 4. And I'm going to put that out there. Could happen, right?
Knock on some wood.
But you know what? If honestly, if you could split that and go 2-2, you'd feel good about it. I mean, Kentucky obviously being at home, Auburn on the road is going to be so tough. But that game came down to the end last time at Tuscaloosa, and then you play Baylor at home. So, at Georgia, winnable game, they're no good. Baylor at home, look, I know they're number 5, but the atmosphere in Tuscaloosa is going to be off the chain. I think Alabama is going to be really tough to beat in that game. Down at Auburn, that is a very, very tough game. But it's Auburn, and you're going to want to play your best against them. It doesn't matter what the records are and who's number 1 or not. And then Kentucky's always a thriller for Tuscaloosa. Alabama, is over the years, has been one of Kentucky's toughest foes.
Oh, yeah.
They always play Kentucky tough. I don't know why, even when they don't have a good team. And this one has a lot of potential. All right, guys, look, before we get out of here, let me remind everybody. Let me throw it up there one more time. There it is. Westgate Luxury Condominiums right next to Bryant-Denny Stadium. Jillian and the crew, as you can see there, handing out the wristbands. That's get you up the elevator. It's such a great place to be. Right next to Bryant-Denny Stadium. You're near the Walk of Champions. You're near the Quad. You're near the Strip. You're near it all. Next time you come to Tuscaloosa, go by and check it out yourself. You can rent units there when you're visiting town. And if you want to buy a unit, there's some available as well. Make sure you slip up to the Skygate Club. That's where we hosted our Alabama post-game show right there on the roof. What a really fun place that is next to the stadium. Find out more information at westgateal.com. And I'm promising you, if it's 1 to 5 bedroom units you're looking for, the spacious floor plans, 900 to 3,000 square feet, they've got it all. I'm telling you, oversized balcony, amazing kitchens, the amenities great, the parking's great, the people are awesome. So find out for yourself. It's like being in the zone, except you live there. Or maybe you just visit there and you're staying. So westgateal.com. All right, Trey, anything else before we pack it up on Monday Night Quarterback?
Nothing much, guys. Just keep tuning in. We got the recruiting big boards coming out. We had our running backs. Andrew Bonin dropped his running backs big board last week. I think we got wide receivers coming here soon. And just keep an ear out. The transfer portal is still very active. I said it might be a little bit of time, but news can break at all times. So, who knows who's coming in these next couple weeks. And, be sure to tune in for that Reeces Bowl coverage because we're going to have a whole lot of it. Stay warm, guys. I know we got snow all over the country right now. Hit that like button. Get in the comments and let us know what you're thinking on the way out here because, Mick, this is probably my favorite time of the week where we get to just kind of break it down and address everything from the week before. So that's about all I got this week. But, guys, just keep tuning in. Keep hitting that like button. We appreciate everything you guys are doing.
Yeah, guys, look, we're going to have you covered on recruiting as Alabama, Nick Saban visits the world looking for great football players. We got you covered on the transfers. We got you covered on the Senior Bowl. Anything else breaking Alabama, we'll have that as well as basketball. Thanks for watching. For Chris Daughtry and Trey Yanity, I'm Mick Gillispie. We'll talk to you next Monday for Monday Night Quarterback.